Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Family Randoms. And today we're going to be reacting to one of my favorite channels on YouTube. Top Tenz with the Z. The 10 Worst Jobs in History by Simon Whistler. So, let's get into it.
Hello there, just before we kick things off for today's video, I do want to give a quick plug to a brand new channel from me called Into the Shadows. If that name doesn't give it away, the channel is very much focused on the darker side of things. Early episodes have covered things like how we fight the world's deadliest diseases, how the Congo suffered the worst of colonialism, and how the Nazis escaped Europe to South America. So, if you'd like to explore the darker side of history and science, please check out Into the Shadows. There is a link below. As of 2021, American workers are proving by the millions per month to be unwilling to work their jobs with low wages, limited benefits, uncertainty over hours, and other such drawbacks. Yet for all that, lack of recognition has been the most consistently cited cause for ending employment. All sorts of jobs that were dubbed essential in 2020 are included in the staffing crisis. So imagine how impossible it would be to get people to take on jobs where the wages weren't just low, but the only benefit a person was likely to get was trauma. Let's lay some ground rules for the entries today so that all the entries are not just slavery. It has to be something where there is a hierarchy, an employer, and a wage. So with that in mind, let's look back through history to see how much worse the past really was. Number 10. Battlefield Scavenger. In the wake of a battle that might leave hundreds or even thousands of people dead on a battlefield, either a health and sanitation crisis or a rich opportunity would be left behind depending on how you looked at it. While soldiers tended to get first dibs as far as rifling through the fallen's effects went, with little concern with which side the deceased fought on, before long there would be those who collected what they could find from the dead, including, as mentioned in another top 10's list, teeth. As harrowing as the thought can be for the dead dying or their families back home, there were a...
What?
Wow. He went back. He talking about when people was going and taking from the dead in the field.
Oh.
Yeah, Battle of Scavengers.
Yes.
Oh.
They're taking their gold tooth out their mouth.
Wow.
Their shoes off or whatever they see that's valuable to take off the people.
That was the worst job, man.
Oh, that was on Patriots.
Oh, there's a lot of movies.
They showed it on Patriots?
A lot of movies.
They showed Glory too.
And fictional westerns. They always show it on westerns. And people be out and all of a sudden they do that, meet you at 3 o'clock, you know, and then they shoot each other. That person died and people all jump on them and start taking all stuff off of them. And yeah.
They don't need no more. What they said.
Yeah, basically.
multitude of dangers for the scavengers. Gangs of criminals were an inevitability. In addition to that, a number of predators, particularly wolves, were sure to descend on any such environment. Gunpowder introduced the tremendous danger of unexploded shells that could go off at any moment, which is such a lingering problem that shells from World War I are still undergoing delayed detonations today. That's not even getting into the masses of flies and other forms of pestilence brought by corpses for months afterwards. In 1812, the French general Philippe Séguin wrote of the Battle of Borodino, the most significant battle during Napoleon's invasion of Russia, that 2 months later the field was still littered with thousands of corpses.
He dressed good.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
That boy
With that booty
was
chin.
dressed like a pimp.
A pimp.
Okay.
He was.
Yeah, it's a pimp. You know, pimps love their fur.
What fur?
That were half devoured. As disrespectful as it may seem to the dead and dying to pick at their corpses, it was utterly necessary for something to be done about all those dead, and in fact there was considerable official sanction for the process. At the Battle of Waterloo in 1822, a British newspaper reported that bones of the dead from the battle had been retrieved and brought to the Isle to be processed as fertilizer, all estimated to have reached 1 million bushels.
What
Number 9, salt miner. As we
I mean, human remains?
I'm a new gardener, and we will buy blood meal and bone meal, and it's usually from animal carcasses, usually, and I hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, them back in the old days was going getting the rotted, you know, the corpse of people, and after they done rotted for a while, just bones left or whatever. They go get the bones and use it for farming. I can't do this.
Their enemy bones?
This is really dark. I had I didn't have a little clue of this. Man,
That's different.
Man.
Cover before on this channel, you never know
Yes.
what you're going to find in a
That's
mine.
blasphemy.
For many, though, what you're most likely to find is fear and pain. Roughly 10% of coal miners will suffer from black lung disease after 25 years underground. Accidents have been so disastrous that in a single disaster in Liaoning, China on April the 26th, 1942, 1,549 miners died from suffocation. Yet as awful as all that is, salt mining adds tremendous hardships onto the mining ordeal. Just breathing the air of salt mines introduces such severe dehydration in miners that it takes even more years off their lives than coal mining. Indeed, The Local reported that a 2016 study of 2,000 ancient Roman skeletons found that salt mining was the largest reason that the average Roman worker died at 30, and that many of them were suffering from arthritis at the end of their lives. Salt mining is also work that is especially susceptible to bursts of carbon dioxide or methane gas. Great. Galley rower. Working a gigantic ore might seem like the sort of back-breaking toil that you could only get people to take under the threat of death or torture. The truth was that ancient Romans, Greeks, and medieval naval commanders would only turn to slaves out of desperation. It makes sense. Even the lowliest galley rower, to a large extent, holds the fate of an expensive ship and its crew in their hands. You wouldn't want a slave in that position any more than you'd want a slave helping to drive a tank or pilot a drone. Even when they were used in such a way, it was usually a matter of course that victory would mean they would be officially freed. Yet, even free galley rowers were indeed signing up for a horrendous job. Roughly a third of people who did the task were there as punishment, and they died within 3 years. Bewilderingly, despite them taking on a deadly, literally back-breaking job, many contracted galley rowers did not include in their agreements that they be provided with food or lodgings while on land. Surely most captains knew it would be bad business to let their ship's engine die of anemia during a voyage.
So you just roll it.
Yeah, roll yourself to death.
What was that?
Yes.
I was
But yeah, roll themselves to death.
roll.
Roll
Roll. Okay.
Yeah.
Dang, that's still
to
I
death.
thought you said, "Oh, roll it." Okay.
No. That's funny.
But that doesn't seem like something where you could rely on the goodwill of your employer. Number
That
7.
was part of
World
the
War II Submariner. Surprisingly, for tens of thousands of naval employees, the march of technology did nothing for their health and well-being. For all the reputation of being the silent hunters of the deep during the early days of the Second World War, by the end of the war, the submarines were more of a danger to the Kriegsmarine than they were to the Allies. The 40,000 men who sailed beneath the waves for the Reich, more than 63% were killed and 12% were captured. For perspective, that's a higher casualty rate than Japanese kamikaze pilots who famously set out intending to crash. For comparison, the deadliest service to fight in as an American was the Merchant Marines, who suffered a roughly 4% mortality rate. The main reason it was so costly to be a submariner then was that technology caught up with the submarine over the course of the war, especially when it came to using radar and escort ships. On the way to their death, they had to deal with uniquely cramped quarters, pervasive diesel stench, and their food was especially prone to becoming mouldy, forcing them to rely on cans. Number 6. Leech collector. Some professions...
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, being a soldier, yeah, I know about that for history. It's I tell you, boy. I won't say so much. This is so jacked. This is just jacked. You gonna treat your soldiers like that? Because back then they didn't have much preservant, you know. And those old wars, they didn't have to be able to preserve the food good. Exactly. And they're crunched in their quarters, and you're eating crappy and sleep deprivation, and you got to deal with the fact that you could die at any moment.
And all we do is say, "Happy Veterans Day."
Exactly. Or thanks for your service or whatever. It's man, this government owed them so much. It's ridiculous.
They should have a parade.
Sound like a joke on some level. Being professionally bitten by leeches is so unrelatable to a modern person that it has something of that flavour to it. And yet, when using leeches for bloodletting became a fad in the 18th and 19th centuries, many people decided that it was for them. Some collectors had the luxury of pushing a beast of burden to serve as bait into bog waters that were ideal hunting grounds for the pseudo-medicinal animals, but since that was too risky or costly for many, they had to make do with their own legs. The profession was particularly popular during UK summers, where the soggy environs were ideal for it. An account by George Walker from 1814 states that the profession was most commonly performed by Scottish women. Overhunting of the leeches eventually led to their extinction in many areas, and it forced many apparently very...
They use Scottish women mainly in some areas?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
You already know that. You know how they thought of women.
Why Scottish?
Majority of this is Europeans.
Yeah, okay.
And that's, yeah. Wow. European history.
Very interesting and dark.
Dark.
Stoic workers to change professions. Number 5, lead workers. In 1921, Thomas Murphy discovered that introducing
lead.
tetraethyl lead into gasoline made engines run quieter, and he managed to sell an industry on putting a chemical that had been known to be a neurotoxin for millennia in as a fuel additive. In 1986, thousands of workers were exposed to horrific amounts of lead. An estimated 5,000 a year would die of heart complications brought on by lead poisoning. Midgley himself would be left nearly debilitated by his own invention when he held a press conference in 1924 to mislead the press. With honesty or even basic morality clearly not a top priority for those with an interest in keeping lead in consumer goods, workers were subjected to abuses that were difficult to imagine. For example, in 1975, a lead smelting plant in Kellogg, Idaho was firing employees for having too high of a lead level in their blood, and it brought local 7854 United Steelworkers to file a grievance that became a statewide debate. Health implications aside, imagine the stress generated by knowing that you could lose a vitally important job working with poison because it had just poisoned you too much. Number 4, Lumberjack. Even today, the logging industry...
Oh, God.
But we need someone to work it.
Exactly.
Come work over here and die. It's going to jack you up for sure, but we're going to pay you this much. What's the point of paying me this much if I'm going to be brain dead?
Well, it's when they get too poisoned, then they fire them. So you got to deal with that. Is it
That's
today?
crazy.
What all of us complain about work is it's kind of embarrassing what all these people went through. And
You
then
want me to zone an out
exactly. We complain about you want to work on the weekends.
on the weekend? Even Sunday?
is the deadliest field in the United States of America. From logs sliding out of restraints to falling limbs to generally being out in the elements during dangerous weather, it's a career which kills 86 out of every 100,000 people on the job. That puts it at 33 times the average, and according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's more than 5 times deadlier than being a police officer. So, how much worse was it in times past when people had to rely on wagons instead of trucks, since there were no rapid emergency medical services? While hard numbers are not available, we can extrapolate from mining figures that it was killing thousands of Americans per year. A particularly illustrative fact that shows just how lax safety standards were in days past is that in 1917, not a single lumber yard in the state of Minnesota had a first aid facility on site. Number 3. Body collectors. At least battlefield scamming.
You can't get past that.
Which way the tree gonna fall?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then they didn't watch each other back, so that's why I always yell timber.
Yeah.
Where? It's too late.
You should see the one I cutting down, though. I mean,
Well, it was a whole bunch of people out working. Y'all got to really work together because
Now
reality
they cut in a
is
certain angle. And
because if you ain't gonna do one at a time, you'll be there forever.
Yeah, true.
So that's I left it. No, y'all just ignored the fact that he's a lumberjack. He called a person that cuts down wood. That was a word of the day. I ain't never.
Lumberjack.
I really want to rewind it, but lumberjack. Oh,
He's very proper.
he is so proper.
I like him, but
Boy, you can't tell him nothing. His poop do not stink.
Rangers were overwhelmingly dealing with corpses that were a result of combat. When the Black Death came to Europe in the 1340s, teams were needed to dispose of corpses that were potentially swelling with death for anyone that came near them. While the plague doctor has become a familiar figure in popular culture due to the novelty of the beaked mask, that was actually a practical reaction taken from a faulty conclusion. The beak was for storing flowers and other items that provided a pleasant fragrance, as it was believed that avoiding the stink of death was a preventative measure. With cities such as Florence and Italy losing as much as half their population to the plague, collecting the bodies became a very well-compensated profession indeed. But how much comfort could there be to people who were collecting corpses of people who had died from plague? Rather than being...
With hot bodies, everybody dying running from diseases, well, getting that profession is plenty.
Oh.
He said it that way very properly.
Yeah, very properly, and they paid you very high.
Handsomely
Because-
to die.
Yeah, because you're out there cleaning, and you can get sick from the plague.
Yeah. And
doing
then you're
it.
another body. Someone else picked that body. Dang.
Yeah. You're picking up bodies, baby. That's your job.
Oh my god.
Venerated for being people that took on the most dangerous and necessary professions of their day, reports circulated that
Sorry,
casting
this could have been all avoided if they would just clean their asses. Okay.
or ghastly light. It was said the body collecting attracted such a rough and reckless crowd that it drew many criminals. Number 2, gong firmers. Gong firmer sounds like a colourful bit of outdated slang that could make a comeback at any time. It's a British corruption of gong farmer, which means someone who collects dung. We've talked about how horrible this job would be before, but it turns out that it was in fact decently well paid, and that actually made it worse for many. For example, gong farmers were prone to being attacked by gangsters, as it was known that they were well paid, and they often had to go to the most crime-ridden parts of the city at night, lest their carts disgust all the daytime city denizens. It certainly didn't help that these workers tended to be immigrants. For large buildings where cesspits were allowed to collect particularly large deposits, workers were sometimes lowered into one of them, which could very likely mean one of the worst deaths possible. In 1326, one man, known as Richard the Raker, died subject to death in London. Number 1.
That was a large deposit.
Oh, he's funny. They're
Stop
risky.
playing.
They go collecting poop, and while they doing it, they have to do it in the most worst times ever and dangerous areas and all of that. So they're gonna get crap while they collecting crap.
Yeah, that sucks.
Oh, good.
That is one of the worst jobs.
You know the irony.
Oh,
There's always some crap going on.
Chimney sweeps. How ironic is it that many
Oh, yeah.
people's most vivid impression of this profession is their extremely romanticised portrayal in the 1964 hit Mary Poppins? The truth was that practically from the beginning of the popularisation of chimneys in Europe during the 15th century, it was an extremely dangerous job that was inflicted on the most vulnerable. While in the days before child labour laws, many very young people were put in harm's way for money, chimney sweeps were in an especially bad way, since those often pressed into it were only 4 years old. The reason for this was that only such small children could reach into the angled spaces where soot accumulated in chimneys from those days. Unable to see, barely able to breathe, and in precarious situations anyway, debilitating injuries were practically expected. If that wasn't morbid enough, they often had to work naked. According to a Swedish study reported by the
they're getting severe injuries from going to the chimney, falling in the tube and all that, getting severe
working
injuries,
naked?
and then they're inhaling all of the soot, which giving them health problems. And then these kids are as young as 4, butt naked, being put down a chimney tube. And somehow people believed Santa Claus came down a chimney.
That's sick.
Yeah, don't let your kids watch this video because I told the secret.
Chicago Tribune, being a chimney sweep took an average of 11 to 12 years off someone's life expectancy. Ironically, the reason chimneys were built so dangerously narrow was a safety measure introduced to prevent another fire like the one that consumed much of London in 1666. It was George Brewster who put an end to forcing toddlers into chemical residue. Not that he benefited from it. In 1788, he got stuck in a chimney at Fulham Hospital in Cambridge, UK, and suffocated before he could be rescued. The event caused such a public outcry that same year that laws were written raising the minimum employment age. It was raised to 8 years old. It wouldn't be until 1840 that it was raised into the teen years. For able-bodied adults, the health hazards of sweeping chimneys were so great that they were in a sense revolutionary. This had caused a very pronounced form of scrotal cancer that became known as chimney sweep.
They're wearing blackface.
That was a low blow. Yeah, them babies are sooted up, boy.
Babies. This is so sad.
They look darker than me.
It's Mary
This is so
Poppins
sad.
cancer.
Why I call that for?
Because Mary Poppins. Remember?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They
Cancer.
probably do
In
like
1775,
Yeah,
it was the
they
first
lied,
cancer to
yeah.
be linked to a specific occupational hazard, showing just how prevalent it must have been. So I really hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please do hit
That's
that
why it was
thumbs
always
up button below.
popping up.
Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for watching.
That was great, dude.
Yeah, that was.
I just wait. The kids do this. They get paid. Do they have to give to their parents, or was they doing it for the family?
Yeah, for
How
the
was
family.
that working for the finances?
That
I'm
was
sure the
cancer
kids
already.
didn't keep the money.
Yeah.
I wonder how much it was.
They wouldn't have paid rent. They would have got candy. Ooh, I can get some candy.
Yeah, they're Europeans.
No, you can't get candy.
Bloody candy.
Go sweep some more chip. No, guys, dark. I'm sorry. That's so sad.
This is so
That's
jacked.
depressing.
More
Well,
dark.
there's some sucky jobs back in the day.
And it's mostly Europeans.
Yeah, connecting leeches,
Yeah.
going in swamps.
Well, that's the easiest one on here.
Yeah, the
What's the
leech.
You
meaning?
just put on the boot,
Well,
them boots, and let them suck your boots.
and then,
You
but
walk
then you
through.
got to grab them and put them in buckets and pulling them
Oh,
off of you,
yeah.
sticking to you,
I ain't
drinking
know
you.
about
That's ooh.
Been
They
that
have
and-
gloves?
And then they
Yeah, I don't
actually, leeches find a way to still get in your little under your shirt and clothes. It's a messy job. Them women went through it then. And then you gotta think.
Put the winch out there.
There's some men too. It did.
Go collect the leeches.
Because she's a leech.
Yeah. Oh, it's so terrible. That's terrible. We making light of it, but that's really sucky.
sad.
Yeah, and collecting bodies.
Oh, yeah.
Having plague.
That's something.
He put that big old penguin face thing on.
Yeah, they put on an outfit to
Yeah.
like spiritually chase away the plague from themselves. Like
Yeah, it was a video that explained that, but I never watched it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, but
But
That's crazy.
yeah, so basically it was dressed up like a bird.
yeah.
It must have helped because people was.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it alone. Yeah, that was very interesting. Good video.
Yeah, I love John Russell videos.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it, guys. See you guys in the next one.